Well, thank you for joining us for that awesome episode with Will and Jason. We're going to do a little bonus minisode. What are we calling it?
Minisode. I like it. It's called a minisode.
That's cute. Yeah, just jam on takeaways and learnings.
I think they're really lovely in how they both work together, but it makes it very like everybody's in agreement, even though they're totally different.
I think the listeners will understand the different perspectives, but it was not a battle. It was not a war.
No, I mean, I think they're
so curious to get your take.
Yes, I thought it was very interesting because, yes, we picked them on purpose because their firms deploy very different strategies. I mean, you can look at the Slow website, which is minimalist. This is the primary one, or the primary New York Tech Summit. I mean, they do all these things which are all-encompassing. I'm trying to think of a good word that sort of speaks to like the breadth of what they're trying to accomplish with a small firm. I mean, I don't think Slow and Primary have vastly different AUMs. And it's entirely possible that Slow has a lot more because I think they're older. And they sort of go to market is wildly different. But I think they're trying to accomplish the same thing as an investor, right? Find that great outlier company and how do you help them? And they both seem to care a lot about the first 18 to 24 months as early stage seed investors would. So I was a little bit surprised by how similar they were, even though very different.
Yeah. I think Will had I think a pretty good summary in that their approaches are not wildly different, but if you were to zero in on the exact difference of opinion on the ecosystem in the world, it's whether or not you believe the founder has to do every single function in the early days on their own and be great at every single function, versus I think Jason's view is the founder is going to be great at a few functions. They can learn the other functions and we can help them learn the other functions quicker.
Yes, which is 100% why Andreessen started this whole business model back in the day, right? It was like back in the day, it was the counter Sequoia model, which is if the CEO can't do it all, we'll just replace the CEO. And they counter positioned and said, no, that's like, why do you have to do that? There are other ways.
Yeah.
Could put words in Jason's mouth about the relevancy.
I also thought the other part of the conversation that spoke to me the most was the sort of refinement around contrarian, which I think is right. And I quite frankly hadn't really thought about it that way, where it's like the market is actually usually correct and efficient. And so if you're building a whole strategy around constantly being contrarian at every single investment, probably going to be painful. Whereas like actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to find just the things before folks know about them, before it's become mainstream. So it's not even contrarian, it's just sort of unknown.
This is the job of the real early stage investor, is to get out before the trend becomes the trend. I really liked...
I know, but I think I had still thought of that as contrarian. It's actually not contrarian.
No, I really liked the conversation around contrarian. I thought it was very interesting. So I think we all take these one or two sentence things and like bumper sticker it and be like, oh yeah, this is how it works. And understanding what contrarian and right means is very, very important, because otherwise you're just investments are hard. And so being clear on what it is you're shooting for. And I really enjoyed the conversation aspect of if you're just really far out there and no one else is going to want to fund the company for a while, that's fine. But you have to build that into your strategy because someone's going to have to fund it. And that's another aspect of the contrarian that it's very important for people, especially folks who are newer, to understand. Because I think when you've been doing it for a while, you get it because you've lived it. And then that's just a different way of understanding.
I mean, it's not contrarian and right. It's actually just before the thing is well understood and right.
Yes.
And I think I had even been describing contrarian as like it's not actually what we do, how I think about it. So I think that was good learning for me. So glad we're doing this podcast.
So Nick, what do you think? Do we think our burning question of do VCs add value is answered? And are you going to change what you do as an investor because of what you learned?
I guess it depends on whether or not I have to like take the party line here. Do I have to be as friendly as Will and Jason were? I guess is the question. They were both very polite. I don't know. I don't think there's an answer. I think we sort of talked about this at the beginning. There's no one way to win in venture. There's different approaches for each firm. I think finding what fits for you. Me personally, I've never considered building out big platform services team. My specific experience with founders is that the really great founders figure out a way and do it themselves. But look, I think Jason had some really good data to support his points in terms of how founders use the services that they offer and some of the success stories. And so, would I tell a founder specifically not to take money from a firm that has a big platform and value add service? No. I think it totally depends on the person and the firm and the strategy. And I do think that in some ways Will undersells. I think it feels like a really good, authentic way to work with a founder, which is you're the star. You're going to do all the hard work. We're not the difference between success and failure. And they probably aren't. Very long ramble. I don't think there was a winner today. And I think, like we suspected, there's lots of different approaches.
I think so. And I think what I was wondering about, not that numbers are the saving grace on this, but I was wondering about Will's observation. He made this on, I believe, this podcast and other ones, which is, external forces, VCs sitting in that camp only impact maybe 5% of a company outcome. And what I was wondering is maybe the slow way of doing that 5% is exactly what you said, through interpersonal engagements and trying to get it and help the founders think. And they will therefore attract founders that want that kind of engagement. Whereas primary, all that awesomeness might just go into that 5% as well. And it's still that same 5%. It's just how it gets impacted, because at the end of the day, the LP stereotypical answer is you got to be in the companies that matter, and matter being defined vis-a-vis your fund size, because we know it's a power law business, and whatever it takes for you to attract the founders that are going to be meaningful to you is good business.
Yes. And at the very least, do no harm. Don't get in the way. Don't be a distraction. Don't be a source of additional stress. I think Will and Jason both add value in different ways, even if Will's not willing to admit it. And anyway, I think both of their approaches are valid.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks for listening to Origins.
Origins is produced by OpenLP, a resource for the venture ecosystem from Sapphire Partners, and in partnership with Pod People and Nick, and I'm Beezer Clarkson.
I'm Nick Churls. We'll be back soon. Thank you for listening.